Hey folks, welcome back. I'm David and we're here in my shop where I build E-War guitars. This is going to be video number 7, episode 7 of the tutorial series on how to build an electric guitar. And in this video, we're going to be taking some of these guys right here. We're going to be making some of this stuff right here. And in the end, we're going to have this guy right here. Anyway, I hope you all stick around and watch it, and I hope you dig it. And if you do dig it, how about you give me a like and subscribe? Anyway, let's get rolling with the video. Okay, so it's time to jump in and start building our neck blank. And we're going to do something unique on this one. We're going to do stripes up the center. We're going to laminate the neck, and we're going to do these stripes up the center. But the unique thing is they're going to taper the same taper as the neck has. So each piece in this neck is going to be tapered from end to end. And to me, it makes all the difference in the world. It's just a really cool look and head and shoulders above the standard straight stripes going up the middle. And I'll show you on this. This is a guitar I recently built. In fact, this is the first time I've done the tapered inlays going up the back of the guitar neck. And to me, it makes all the difference in the world. So as you can see, each of these stripes, there's basically 3. You got the center, which is the main body of the neck wood. And then there's a maple strip going up either side of that. And you can see they actually follow the same taper all the way up the neck. So it gets thinner up towards the top. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that because it's really cool. I hope it's coming up in the camera nice. But let me put this guitar aside and get into how we're going to do it. First time I'd ever done tapered stripes. So to do that, I really had to figure out how I wanted to do it, how much I wanted to taper. And so I made up this little template basically for me to follow. It was just a visual thing that I could measure, and I put the green tape on it so I could see it because, well, you mark with a pencil on a dark piece of wood and it's just kind of hard to see. So, but this is what it's going to be. So these, all 3 of these, actually all pieces in this neck taper. And these 3 here, in the case of our neck, it's going to be 2 stripes of red heart going up, this stuff right here. And we're going to surround either side with a very thin veneer of walnut. And the main body of the neck, which is represented by the green here, is going to be this piece of flame maple. And so what I did to figure out how much to taper, what I did was I measured the width of the neck at the nut, and I measured it again at the 12th fret, okay? Now I took that difference, and I can't remember what it was. I think it was like 3/16 of an inch different, okay? And then I had to divide that 3/16 up into these, basically these 3 stripes that go in there. So each one of these stripes tapers between the 12th fret and the nut 1/16 of an inch, okay? I know it looks a lot more than that, but I just checked it with my ruler again before I flipped on the camera. And it is, each one of those is tapered a 1/16 of an inch. But it just has such a dramatic look to it. Anyway, so I'm going to explain more as we're going along. And so now this one, I did all these by hand. But now recently I made a taper jig to go on my bandsaw that we'll use too to do this, which I think is going to make it really super easy. Anyway, let me get that camera reset up and we're going to start milling this stuff. We've got to first flatten all this, flatten it and join it and get it ready to go. And then we're going to rip it down into our starting width, which we're going to go with 1.5 inches. Because remember, our finished neck, I want it to be 1.25 inches thick. So we're going to start at 1.5 inches, make up the blank. And by the time we plane down the blank and get it flattened and everything, we'll be down to 1.25 inches, which is the thickness of the heel. So anyway, let me go ahead and get that camera set up and we're going to start rolling with this right now. So as always with this rough sawn lumber, the first thing you got to do is square it up and flatten it up too. You want that face and the edges to be perfectly square and flat and straight. So, and that board's a little bit too wide for me to run across my 6-inch joint, so I'm going to go ahead and rip it in 2 so I can flatten the face. So once you flatten one side on the joiner, then you take it over to your planer, you run it through a couple times to get both faces parallel. Precision is everything in guitar making, and you want to do just the best you can to get each piece of lumber as you're going to stage as perfect as you possibly can. And of course, always check it with my calipers there to be sure we're running true.
because you never know. Now we'll get it down to the inch and a half or so. So once they're all ripped, I'm going to run them through my planer all together. So when it's all said and done, those are all exactly the same width. And of course, I'm going to go through the same process with the walnut as well as the red heart too. So we want all those pieces going in the neck to start out the same thickness.
Okay, so here's all the parts that are going to go into our neck. I don't know if you can see that flaming. I'm going to try to tilt it up here in the camera. Yeah, that flaming in that flame maple is just beautiful. Really turned out nice, you know. So we basically got all vertical grain wood, which I think is cool. I've squared, I've flattened both sides. I've squared up the ends to match the faces, square against the faces. And I've planed down everything so it's all exactly the same thickness. We are 1.5 inches thick right now. So now it's time to start and take these and start doing our tapers. And for that, I've got, well, let me show you. Let me move my camera. For that, I've got this taper jig right here that it's just, it slides on one of the T-slots on my saw. And I mean, this is a standard taper jig, it's nothing new. This edge follows straight with the blade. It's just touching the blade here. And the fence is adjustable on these two guys right here. I can adjust the taper. And so right now I have that set on a taper for my 2 stripes and the center, the 2 red heart stripes and the center maple stripe. I'm gonna sticky tape the boards to this fence right here, and they're gonna sit right up on top here and run it through, and I should have a great taper. And then I'll just have to plane the edges smooth, of course. But anyway, this is what we're gonna start with next. We're gonna go on to this.
So I was really thrilled to death with how that taper jig wound up working out. It was perfect. That tape, that was kind of cheap double-sided sticky tape, and it was a bear getting it off. But other than that, it worked beautiful. Anyway, that jig worked out too. It made it nice. That little T-slot fit in the other T-slot on the edge of the thing right there, so I could set it up and do my work on it. And it holds it in place for me, and then I could just put it right on the other one and cut away.
Okay, so that went really well. I really like that little jig over there. It was a piece of cake to cut these guys here. I don't know if you could tell in there in the camera, but I cut the center one originally the same width as the 2 red heart pieces, and I decided to go ahead and make it a little bit thicker. So I used the cutoff, and I made it just a tad thicker. It's, I don't know, just a smidge thicker, not too much. You know, I want to ultimately maintain square parallel edge pieces that are about 2.5 inches wide. That'll give me plenty enough to work with to cut my neck out and cut my neck pocket and everything. So that's what I want to maintain. So my next step is I've got to cut some of this walnut into the laminate pieces, or the veneer pieces that are going to go in between the red heart and the maple pieces. So I think before I do that though, I'm going to go ahead and sharpen up my plane over there, and I'm going to run my planer on the edges of all these pieces here, get them perfectly trued up and get them perfectly flat, so I can kind of determine how thick I need to make the veneer pieces of walnut that goes in between.
So I'll be perfectly honest with you, though I've used planes my entire life working as a carpenter in construction, I'm relatively new to them, to guitar building. I really thought that the power tools would do everything that these bench planes and block planes would do, but the truth is, they're just not as good. You cannot do with a joiner, or at least I can't do with a joiner what I could do with a good sharp plane like that. So each time before I use it, I go ahead and hit it on that. It's a 6,000 grit stone. I hit it on that for just a few minutes before I go to use it. And what a difference it makes. I mean, that's a great tool, and I'm getting better at using it all the time. So here I'm just going down and I'm shaving off the bandsaw marks, and I'm making sure it's all perfectly flat and running straight. Getting some real nice shavings out of it too. I go through each piece. I probably spent a good couple hours altogether planing this stuff, but it was well worth it. Those pieces fit so beautifully in the neck. It's great, it really is. And I just put a little double-sided sticky tape up there on the end of each piece, and that was for the most part enough to hold it. I had them slip a couple times, but not too bad. And you can see I've got that piece of MDF pinched in between the bench dogs on that bench, and that was just a great thing too. That bench has really turned out to be an awesome thing to work with. Well, now that I've got those other guys all planed down, I could see the width, the ultimate width of the neck, and I could tell how wide to make my pieces of walnut, which wound up being a 1/16 of an inch, but then I planed them down quite a bit to something quite a bit less than that. If I remember right, I actually remember seeing it on one of my rulers. They wound up being about 1 millimeter in thickness. Look at that pile of walnut shavings I got there. That's really an enjoyable thing, using a hand tool like that to come out with something that's just a beautiful finish when you're done planing it. And it's a pretty good workout too.
Okay, so let's recap where we're at so far. So I've got my red heart and my maple center strip all cut on a taper. I've made 4 of these veneers. I actually made 5 veneers just in case I had one go bad as I was planing. I planed everything so they're all nice and smooth and they fit together beautifully. And you can see, I think it's looking pretty cool. I think it's looking cool. The walnut I think is going to darken up a bit when we go to put clear on this thing. And I think there'll be a better contrast between the walnut and the red heart. And I think the red heart is going to deepen up too. So I think it's going to look really cool. And something I'm really happy with is, you know, when I ripped this, I lucked out in these grains. The flaming on these 2 outside pieces are both angled upwards towards the headstock. And I think that's really cool looking. Also, you can see on here I drew my, I hope this is in the camera. I don't know if it is or not. You can also see I drew on here the outside of the neck itself, and you can see these 2 outside pieces when the neck gets cut out will be running parallel with each other. So I think that's going to look pretty cool. So that tells me that our taper is just right because it matches the taper of the neck. I may not place it down at the bottom here. I'll probably center it up in there, which brings me to my next point. I'm a little bit narrow. With the narrowest end, I'm about 2 1/4 inches. Way up here, I'm probably just a little under 2 1/4. And I'd prefer to have maybe 2 3/8 or 2 1/2 because I want to make this a square. This is going to be a square. The 2 outside pieces are going to be parallel for working on the rest of this neck. And when I rip that down and plane it, I'm even going to be under 2 1/4, and that's getting too small for me because that's getting down into the area of the bottom of my neck is going to be around that size. So I want to make sure that I have enough width to work with. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take out this center piece. I still have one more pieces of these of the flame maple. I'm going to rip 2 more pieces, right? And I'm going to do 2. So I'm going to turn this piece here into 2, make them just a smidge wider, just maybe a 32nd of an inch each one wider. And then I'm going to take my leftover piece of walnut I have, and I'm going to run a stripe right up the middle of the thing. I think that'll look pretty cool. And if I can cut it out right of that piece of maple I have, I'm hopefully going to get the 2 flames to also point in an up direction, just like the 2 outsides are. And I think that's going to look pretty cool. Anyway, so I'm going to get set back up on my jig over there, my taper jig, and start cutting that piece, and let's see how we do. Then after that, we're going to go ahead and cut these 2 outside pieces down and get those tapered too, and then we'll be gluing it up. Anyway, let's get going with that right now.
I don't know if I really explained that very well, but what I'm doing is I'm going to take that center strip, do away with it, and cut 2 new pieces to make up that 1 center strip. So that's what I'm doing with the maple. And then I'm going to cut a 3rd piece in there, which is going to be that last piece of veneer I had, that walnut veneer. And I think it looked really cool. And I got a dead-on straight line down the center of my neck, so I won't have to guess at that as I'm carving and everything. And as it turns out too, I wound up not videoing me cutting the 2 outside pieces of the neck to their proper taper, which was honestly just more of the same thing here, me running it through my taper jig and then planing it off. There was probably more head scratching going on cutting those two outside guys than anything else, so you ain't missing nothing. Just some head scratching.
Okay, so here it is. It came out pretty good. I wound up with a total width of just under 2 3/8, which I'd rather have 2 1/2, but 2 3/8 ought to work. I actually drew out the neck blank on it. You see I got a little extra room here. So I got room to still resurface this and square it up and everything. But I think it turned out really cool. I like it. I think the flaming is going to look good. And anyway, so what I'm going to do, I'm getting ready to glue this up. So I'm going to take this 1/4 inch dowel right here, and I'm going to drill in 2 indexing pins. Now this is 1/4 inch. I'm going to drill a 7 millimeter hole, which is just a little big for this because I don't want it fitting too tight. Because I've got, I think, 11 pieces here to glue up all together, and you got to work really quick. And if that's too tight, I'm going to be fighting it too much. So I'm going to drill it a little bit loose, and I'm going to drill it way up here on this end. See, I'm going to take off probably 3 inches off each end of this thing because it's just way too long. So I'm going to drill one way up here on this end and one way down here on this end too. And as I'm gluing it up, that's going to help hold all the pieces in alignment in time for me to get the clamps on it and all that kind of thing. So I'm going to go over there to the drill press and set up and drill those out, and we're going to get gluing.
I'll tell you, I'm really glad I drilled those holes just a little bit big. 7 millimeters is not a whole lot bigger than a 1/4 inch, but it made all the difference in the world. I've done this before where I had a small little, I don't know, maybe 1/8 inch thing or something, and boy, it was tough to do. It was really tough. And when I drilled it the same exact size hole. So drill the hole a little bit bigger. It works. You got to work really quick when you're gluing these things up like that. And that's a great little, that's like a silicone paintbrush type thing. It's made for gluing, for gluing up stuff, and it really worked out nice. It's got like these little silicone fingers on the thing, and it spread it really well. I was able to move quick with it and didn't get glue all over my fingers. So now I always clamp those down that way first. I clamp them. That's, by the way, that's a piece of granite that we're sitting on, and I clamp them downwards first to make sure all the pieces are staying in alignment down on the piece of granite, which is perfectly flat. And then I can go along and put on all of my clamps the other way. And incidentally, I start clamping on one end and I work my way to the other. I don't know if it really matters, but I've heard it does, and that's what I do, and it seems to work out okay for me. So the moment of truth. Taking something I glued up out of the clamps was always kind of exciting to me. You get to finally see your finished product of what you've been working so hard on. And in this case, the finished product is a neck blank. We got a long ways to go with this neck still, but this is the first finished product of many on this neck. I always cover everything with wax paper too to keep glue off everything. Then you just throw the wax paper away. So now I go back through the flattening process again. Remember, I've got about a 1/4 inch extra thickness on this neck than I needed, and I do that for this reason. So I go ahead and I flatten it off, and I get all the glue off of one side. And once it's flattened on the joiner, I'll take it over to my planer to parallel up the other side. And then just to see the finished product a little better, I thought I'd run it through my drum sander a couple times. That's 120 grit. It just took out the chatter marks from the planer and let me see what it's going to look like. And I am thrilled to death. It really turned out cool.
Well, there you go. We've come to the end of another one. This time for this guy to go in the hot box for a week or so. A lot of work's been done on it, you know, a lot of cutting, a lot of shaping, and a lot of gluing. And it's going to need to go in the hot box and stabilize for a couple days. It came out just right. It's about a little under 2 3/8 wide. I still got about 1 3/8 here in thickness. I'm perfectly flat and square and straight with everything. I think it looks cool. What do you think? I think it came out really neat. I'm very pleased with this thing. Anyway, I hope you all got something out of this. I hope you dug it. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. God bless you, and we'll see you all in the next one.